right, good morning. We'll go ahead and start the engineering committee of November 10th, 2020. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? I currently don't see any.
We don't have the people.
We don't have anybody on, right?
No members of the public are here.
Okay.
Can you put the sidebar up on the screen?
Oh.
There's nobody here but me.
Okay.
Okay. There you go.
Cool.
Modern technology.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay. All right, then we'll go ahead and move on to item number 1, which is the approve the minutes of the meeting we held on September 29th. Is there any comments on the minutes?
Oh, they're fine.
All right. There is no public comment to ask? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to item number 2, which is the project status. Okay. Go ahead and get started here. First one we're doing here, right at the beginning, page 1, which is pipeline replacement. Lister Avenue and Country Club Terrace. They finished the final main line installation. So now they're tying in the existing services to the new line now that they've got the new line finished up and on service, I should say. That was done by our maintenance department. Maintenance completed that work. Once they get done with all of that, they'll have to do final paving depending on weather, et cetera, when they get that taken care of. Rough and Ready Roundabout, this is one we talked about before, that the county's putting a roundabout over here. We've run into a little bit of a discussion with the county. This has to do with the realignment. So they are going to take care of the culvert for the crossing for the canal, but new engineers come on board and said that you guys can maintain your existing pipeline where it's at, and that we don't want to relocate it. So we're having ongoing discussions with regards to that, because we don't want to have a pipeline that's sitting in the middle of a new roundabout, because when we do have to go and deal with it, it's going to be a problem. Our assumptions up until this point were that the county would take care of that as part of their project.
And has the county said they would take care of it?
In discussions up until that point, that was my understanding. Now we are not there. They're suggesting that if we want to move it, we can move it at our time, at our expense.
What's the condition of that pipeline? When was it installed? What's it made of?
It is a ductile iron pipe. I don't know what year it was installed. The trick is, ultimately, when we have to go and deal with it, it's always better to not be in the middle of the roundabout and trying to deal with that. So if we can relocate it off to the side and be done with it, that makes the most sense. So we're still having some discussions.
Depends on the life of it.
With the county.
It was replaced in
I
5
didn't
years ago.
know.
When do you think it was replaced last? I mean, when do you think it was, is it just when?
It wasn't replaced last year.
Is this the original?
this
It was
the
really
original one
built
that was
in the
original.
last 20 years.
Yeah,
20
probably
years.
somewhere in that, 25, something like that.
Yeah, it's part of the main line extension that goes down Rough and Ready Highway and ends at the intersection of Rough and Ready Highway and Whitney Springs Road.
So one of the things we might consider is just making sure we have enough easement to push off to the side, and so that if we do have to go and replace it, in the future, we could just put it in the new easement located on the side of the roundabout and just abandon the old one in place. The trick is, if we have to do maintenance work on the existing one, that's when it becomes more problematic.
What's the size of it?
Roundabout.
What's the size of this pipeline?
I believe it's
10 inches.
either 8 or 10.
I think it's 10.
Not a very big pipe.
Yeah. Actually, acquiring the easement probably is a good compromise. And I would recommend that as an alternative, so that if you do have to repair it in the middle of the roundabout at a later time, if you have the easement and you can then just move it over at that time, it's really pretty much the same as replacing it now.
Correct, except if the pipe leaks, then it gets dealt with while it leaks. Right? We can't just abandon it.
Emergency repairs.
Yeah.
Right, that's the biggest risk, right, is having to do an emergency repair on it.
But the chance of that pipeline failing anytime in the next 15 to 20 years is probably pretty low.
Yeah, I would even say 30
roundabout in.
Well, then that's on them.
Then there needs to
Then
be
it's on
something that makes it clear that that's on them.
Well, with the understanding that we don't necessarily know the pipe's been scratched, right? Construction work's happening until we go and dig it out.
Till it fails and you find that they screwed it up.
We should have one of our inspectors on the site.
Our inspectors would be, but they wouldn't necessarily be there 24/7, though, right? They check in and check that out while they're doing the grading work, et cetera, to make sure that there's enough cover.
I think that's a good solution. I'm with Director Wilcox.
Okay. Christian Life Way, again, just looking at, investigating the alternative route.
The ulterior motive.
Yeah. To improve access and potentially bring some additional customers in, along that route. So we're looking at that. That's one that's budgeted for 2021, so we'll start getting into that a little heavier, now.
And this is out is that out in Penn Valley?
No,
It's down Highway 49, you drive past it every time you come up there.
You pass by it when you're coming up, it's on the left.
Oh, right.
Big church on the left.
The big church.
Yep, yeah, it's down in that strip.
But it's in your division. So your division comes all the way over to Grass Valley. Okay.
It might or might not be, I don't know exactly where the.
We showed it Division 5, so it's real close to the boundary.
It's very, very close to the boundary. And the boundary down there goes all over the place. It's hard to know.
And are most of the people that aren't on it already, are they on wells, private wells?
Yeah, right, it would be wells that aren't on the well now, or on the pipeline now, yeah. Meadowbrook Pipeline, that's one that was budgeted for next year. That's removing, it's in backyards, et cetera, it's just moving it out onto the street. We've had to go in there and fix that pipe several times, so it's in need of replacement. And that's down in the Auburn area.
Huh, I'll have to get right into it.
North Day Pipeline, we're at 90%. So we're looking at some right-of-way stuff, some additional easement modifications for that. But it's AC pipe that's been deteriorating, and we've had to be out there working on it several times, so.
And what are you replacing it with? Is CPE, or what do you use?
No, it would most likely either be, ductile or C900, depending on, the pressures that are out there. A lot of times we'll allow contractors or even our own folks to choose between the two if they meet the pressure class requirement. And then it's whatever's the better option, cheaper option for them. Willow Acres, that's a big one. There's a lot of 4-inch lines and small AC lines within that subdivision that we'll have to work on. So that's been budgeted for I think design in 2021, and then the actual work is in 2022. So it's going to be a relatively large pipeline replacement.
How many feet or miles, or how long is this pipeline?
I don't know off the top of my head. It would be a couple of miles overall. That's winding through the subdivision and around. I don't know specifically the length. Same with North Day. That one is like 3,100 feet. Or is that the one I just did? I just did that one.
You just did
sorry,
that, right?
Osborne Hill. That's the inlet pipe's going up to the Osborne Hill tanks. We need to put a pipe in there, a larger pipe, so that we can pull water out of the Osborne tanks to better utilize the storage up there. That was one of the things we talked about before with reducing the size of all the Sierra tanks from the 5 million down to the 3 million. And then work on this pipeline as an alternative to better utilize the storage in the existing tanks up there.
How big is
roughly 4 million gallons up there at Osborne Hill.
I'm sorry, what's capacity?
I think there's about 4 million gallons total.
4 million.
I think there's three tanks, 3 or 4 tanks up there. There's at least 3 tanks.
And how much of it are you using now?
We can use it, it's just how quickly we can pull it out and into our system when we need it. So there's some limitations on how fast we can pull that water out.
So it's largely a fire flow issue.
That and peak demand stuff as well, right? It does impact our abilities to move water around, so.
Because if you have 4 million gallons, and that feeds into the Alta Sierra tank that's gonna be 3 million gallons?
No, it doesn't feed in, it feeds into the Loma Rica system, which also feeds into the Alta Sierra. So Alta Sierra tank has a zone in which it feeds, Osborne Hill has the zones in which it feeds. So ultimately, the water from Osborne Hill can get down into the Alta Sierra area, the upper zones as well as into the lower ones. Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then Live Oak Way, that's replacement of a bunch of, service and pipes, that's down in the, Auburn area, that's down towards the bottom end of our service area down there.
By DeWitt?
Live Oak, past DeWitt.
Oh, okay, by the trailer park down there by Luther.
Yeah, correct, other that direction, yeah.
Okay. And you don't know about how many feet or anything?
I don't remember off the top of my head what that one is. So the next one's a PRV replacement, Cedar Ridge, basically at 90%, so, we need to get some additional easement. Again, that's because we're switching everything to above ground and moving things around. That typically requires us to modify or get additional easement requirements.
Do we typically wait till 90% to get easements? It seems like you'd wanna get easements secured before you do the design.
Once so the design is basically, the above ground part of it is pretty much done. It's kind of a boilerplate one for us, so it's really just some piping in and out of it. So we basically get it laid out, the location and where we want it, and then we meet with the property owners and start moving forward with it. But the 90% design is most of the PRV stations already completed.
It seems like we've had a couple of them that after we put all this money into design, we run into easement issues late in the day. Seems like we should secure the site before we do the design. I mean, that's my opinion. Because you spend all this time doing the design and then have to move it. It's kind of redundant.
It's not as if this is a custom design. A lot of this is fairly standard, so there's not huge investment.
Well, they're here over months and months and months that we see they're doing the design at 30, 60, 90, and then.
Well, you're doing multiple different design options, right? So you're trying to find the best.
So typically, what you do is you figure out what we would like to see and what makes the most sense, and it's typically the simplest for us.
Right.
And then we go and meet with the property owners, see if we need to make adjustments to that. So normally the location is where it is. It's just how much we can move it around on the site, right? It's just piping to get it to and from, because the station itself is what it is. It's the above ground. What we're moving to is our standard, so.
But do we often have to move it to a different location along the pipeline?
Typically we don't.
It just seems that
There are
we're
cases
planning.
where we do, but
Yeah. Well, I would think.
Probably a case, wouldn't it be a case by case, Doug? I mean, when you're really kind of getting in, you're looking at the best design for the district, the easiest to do, you're designing the flow and the topographies, right? And then.
yeah, I think what she's trying to get at, right, is that if you just have the conceptual design layout and then
Yeah.
you obtain it before you go to the
Before you
final
go
numbers.
to 90%, yeah.
But for these PRVs, there's not a big difference between 30 and 90%,
Yeah.
because of the fact that it's a pretty standardized product.
I would just encourage trying to get the land earlier in the
Yep.
project.
Reach out a little earlier.
Yep.
After conceptual, though, make sure it's where you want it, and then go and talk to them and see if it makes sense, and then you can adjust from there. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So the next one is, East Ridge. It's early, basically, survey's complete out there, getting the existing information, and then you start to lay out how you want to sit, where the piping's coming in and out of. Bergen Lane, that's, this is the one where we're actually getting rid of the PRV station, and connecting the pipe, through the end of Bergen Lane. There's an easement on the corner where we need to make the pipe route location. This will be constructed by our maintenance guys, so at this point, we're just trying to get the easement from the one property owner. There's a little retaining wall stuff we gotta deal with and get around, so. And then,
This is the former supervisor? No.
it's not ringing a bell.
You're talking about the thing up by the airport, former supervisor, that's Tim Weir.
Oh, that was a while.
That's the one where he built his garage over the top of the
that's done.
different issue.
Last time you had this wonderful map that you showed where.
Yeah, so we do have the same map that we showed before, but we had not included the 2021, the ones that were just assigned, so they weren't on the map, so that's why we didn't include it, but we have it if you wanna pull that up and look at, it. But we will, for the next one, we'll have that. Would you like that up? All right. Okay, so the next one is the, raw water improvement. That should pop up right there.
Okay, subdivision 1. Maybe,
Yeah, that's the one, that's the. Should be up in there, yeah.
okay,
Just right aside from the Madison.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Joanne.
Doty North, that project bids today, 2 o'clock, so we'll receive those bids
Oh, wow.
at 2 o'clock today. So we'll bring that to the board, recommending award a contract next week. The pipe is ready to be delivered, the steel pipe that we pre-purchased as part of the lead time concerns. That's scheduled to arrive the week after Thanksgiving, so that first week in December, the steel pipe will show up. So that's all completed. Actually, we could have shipped today or this week, but we held them off until we get a contractor on board and then set up the logistics of delivery. Might deliver it right to the site versus to our yard first kind of thing.
And I guess the property owner got a bridge deck set?
The deck is set there, yep. I haven't seen that.
And I was looking at it, you know, it's a real bog before and after that bridge deck. What are we gonna do about that?
In terms of,
Are we gonna use that bridge?
I don't know if we're gonna use the bridge yet or not. The contractor, we have the crane mat that we had talked about for our temporary, are at our plaster yard right there. And so they were shown, the contractors were shown during the pre-bid walk. They were shown those bridge mats, so they have the option of just laying those on there and then walking across that pasture. Depending on how Mother Nature goes, we don't wanna go back and forth across that pasture too many times, because it's gonna get wet pretty quick, get tore up pretty quickly.
It's already super wet.
Yeah, yeah. But we don't expect a ton of equipment and vehicles moving back and forth through there.
So you won't be using that as the main access?
That won't be the main access control point, no. Correct. That'll be to get equipment, to get the excavator across there, because we can't go through the ravine, you know, like the old days, so yeah, we'll do that. And we had a mandatory pre-quote, or we call them pre-quote walks, because of the sensitivity of the resources out there. So we had 8 contractors show up for that.
Oh, wow.
So we were happy with that. Yep. So we expect to get a turnout for the number of bids for this one.
Some new ones or the same?
So there's some that are newer. Mm-hmm. And then some that we typically do on projects like this. So it's a combination of the two.
Well, you won't know till you know who's actually bid on it.
Correct.
Right.
We'll know that
Right.
today. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And then they'll get started as soon as we get the notice of award.
As soon as it starts raining.
Unfortunately.
We tentatively got that on, next week.
That's coming to next week's board, right? I got the staff report sitting, waiting to just fill in the details.
He's ready for the number and the
Yeah.
contractor.
So we'll get that on,
Get it
that
rolling.
started.
What's the engineer's estimate for that job?
It was just a little over 400, I don't remember the exact number, it's like
Under $500,000?
420 something, 430, right in there.
All right.
Hopefully it'll be less. Next one, Santini Siphon. We're acquiring the final easements, we're basically done, it's just, getting the paperwork, getting the packages put together for acquiring the easements from the property owners. They're on board with the routes and the way we want to do those, so. Once we get that done, then we'll reduce that for maintenance to build, that's next year's budget, so they should be putting that together. South Yuba Canal, we did our field inspections, the last week in October and the first week in November. They did the tunnel inspections, so GHD was out there doing that. They're gonna come back, I think, in the next couple of weeks, to do additional field work on some areas they identified as bigger concerns that they wanna go out and look at and make some additional, eyes and feet on the ground and take a look.
What kind of bigger concern?
They didn't say specifically, other than they just identified some areas that they want to have more guys go back out there and take a look at structurally wise, in terms of footings, et cetera, what, if it's a concern or not. I don't know the
Is one of our engineers going in along with them and seeing what they're doing?
We had staff, hydro staff in the tunnels. We did not have any engineers walking them when they walked the overall alignment.
So one of the problems that we've experienced in the past there is that there's dry rot in many of the timbers. And I recall quite well when the canal on one calm, sunny summer day just fell over. Are they inspecting that?
That's all part of things that they look at.
And to the extent they find problem areas, we submit those to PG&E, who then fixes them before the canal is transferred to us.
That's a different question.
No.
I thought that was the intention.
So there's they have to deliver it in a similar condition to what it was in when it was sold.
Yeah, which sucks.
And so they're not,
To use a technical engineering term.
So they stopped doing maintenance on it when?
No,
they're still doing maintenance.
They still have to do maintenance to
Yes.
it. They have to keep it at the same level it was when the purchase was completed, but they don't have to improve it above that level.
And do we know what that delta is? What it needs? I mean, have we,
No, that's
before
what
we
this
bought it,
report
did we, so we didn't do it before we bought it, we didn't look at it before we bought it?
We did somewhat.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
But not in a formal report that we had the consultant go through and do that, right?
That's correct.
So
So
we
it's
did-
operational, it's moving water, it continues to be operational and functional, but this report is some of the, some of the other things that are nice to have done, right? That we're gonna have to look at as we move forward.
It'll also
They have to be
develop
done
a
to
CIP.
ensure continuous
So
water.
what'll come out of this
Well,
report
depending on
essentially is a
time.
project list
It will be a CIP for basically that
projects
develop.
that we really need to do to keep it operational.
Right.
in the
And it'll
near
have
term.
priorities, it'll
Priorities and
have
all that, correct.
key moments and milestones, I believe, right?
Correct, yep.
Who's doing that?
GHD?
So do we have any idea what the financial obligation might be?
Not yet.
Not at all.
That's what the study's for.
Preliminary, okay.
Other than we knew we had to take the facility because it's delivering our water to it, so we had much of an option not to take it.
What was it? It's our corduroy artery, what was that? Pretty much the one that delivers, everything, so.
To Scott, right? To Scott's Flat?
So that entire side of the system, so
Everything on the Deer Creek side.
See, next couple is the Maben Canal and the Kyler. We haven't started anything yet, those are for next year's budget. So some of them are, I think the Maben is for construction, I think the Kyler is just for design next year and then construction the following year.
This is further encasement on the Maven?
Yeah, the final phase of the Maben,
What's
Finish
the
that up.
deal with that canal?
in terms of
Is it undersized,
It
is
was
it failing?
undersized and failing.
and it was leaking in multiple locations and a continual maintenance problem, yeah. So the next one's the 8, that's down in your division, Trent Peters. We started working on cycle number 1, that's the one that's located, basically they built a small dam and pond on top of, or right next to our existing one. So we did some exploratory work out there, and it's got quite a bit of seepage issues, making it concerning for us whether we want to open it up and replace the pipe right now. So we're going to continue to work on best ways to get around that, but in the meantime, we think the inlet structure And one of the culverts up above also is a limiting factor, so maintenance is gonna fix those first to see if we can get additional water through them for the moratorium folks, while we figure out the best, method moving forward on replacing of that, without making that dam fail.
Yeah, I was out there last week.
Okay.
I got to visit that site, and the culvert's done,
Yep,
and that's completely done, and they poured concrete Thursday.
for the headwork there.
For the inlet,
Mhm.
and I heard that the pipe was in fine shape, and that wasn't the problem, that it was these two upstream restrictions.
Yeah, so the part of the concern is they didn't know the condition of the pipe because of the constant moisture and wetness of the blackberries down at the bottom where the pipe is, right? So,
Plastic pipe.
so that was part of the concern for putting that on the list to move forward with. So, anyway, we're working on the other pieces now. Hopefully that takes care of the restriction to allow us to open up those for the other folks.
Yeah.
Patio, again, that was a new project, so we're just getting started on that. We included these new ones, I just got assigned to folks, so, not much has been done with them yet, but we'll start to move forward with them.
Is that project intended to increase capacity at the end of the Pet Hill?
The Pet Hill?
Yeah.
Yes, for the Pet Hill extension,
So that's a capacity issue?
I believe that is the case.
Where, it's out in Penn Valley, is that where it's at? Where is it at? Division
Penn
5.
Valley.
I don't know if
Can
that,
you guys pull the map back
I'm
up?
not sure that one's on there, because that was one for this year, that we didn't get put on the map yet.
Oh,
Pet Hill is an
Oh,
extension of the Smith Gordon, which is
Yeah.
an extension of the TAR. And it serves a fairly big area.
it's just not up on the map
This
yet.
is the project, one of these, that is, won't have a star or a dot on it. Same with the next two, the China pipe drop and Clipper Creek Tech Guide, both of those are, just been assigned. The Clipper Creek Tech Guide is,
That was all gone.
I know, we've got about 8,600 feet of it still.
Oh, God.
It's not under high pressure though,
Yeah.
so that's the benefit of that one.
Yeah.
We still need to deal with it, but it's not one slated for construction, that's like 2 years out. So it's just to start to look at it and design on what we need to do with it, and how we want to replace it, et cetera, and move forward with that.
And then we'll be Techite free?
Then that should be the last piece, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Knock on wood.
That's been a journey.
Yeah. But like I said, this one's not under pressure, so that helps.
Yeah. Pressure's what hurts.
Pressure is what kills that stuff quickly. Next one is, E. George Lake Wildwood. So the section on Ridge Road that's gonna be constructed by our maintenance crews, they received the final drawings, so they can order their material. So they'll order their material and start, replacement of that 10-inch pipe there along Ridge Road,
What's it gonna be replaced with?
20-inch.
20-inch?
Well, this upgrade is really all part of the backbone extension project. So
Well,
this
it's a combination,
this
right?
has to be bigger to handle the excess capacity going down Rough and Ready Road into Lake Wildwood. So that's the idea.
In addition to upgrades within our existing system that we have currently.
When is construction anticipated to start?
I'd have to get with maintenance on that, they put their schedules together, but it'd probably be after the first of the year, I guess, or it may even be, into springtime once irrigation
But it's
starts to happen.
using the budget that was carried over from
Correct.
last year.
Yeah, they'll order the materials now.
So we had $2
within the
million
budget that we
in
have.
there that was unused, then that's been reserved.
So they will take that.
Last week's management, report, I think I did say that maintenance was just waiting for the final set of drawings from engineering, and I think they were ordering it this week or soon. It'll be ordered this year for installation and construction next year.
Correct.
And Tanya designed
It's
that?
being constructed on last year's money.
Correct.
You got the pictures ready, Joanne? Okay. Next one is non-programmatic, so Comey Phase 1. We've started back up, we've got a couple pictures, we just show,
Martin Reservoir.
Well, we're doing Colby first, but there you go. Okay. So, this is finishing up where we ended off last year, the next picture, Joanne. So that was where we stopped last year. And so from that location there, so now this year we tore all the walls down, so the remaining walls on the phase one are now all knocked down. You can see the bypass was installed. Okay. Don't move too quick. Still going. Yeah, that one's fine. Go on the next one. Okay, hold that one. So this is at the bottom end. This is near where the Bear River siphon is. They knocked the wall down. They're sitting up. That excavator is sitting up on the drive on the road that ran next to the canal. So this was the first piece that they put in from where we finished off last year. This is a specialized piece. It's basically a double belt.
That's an adapter.
Exactly. It's a double belt because now from this direction, they're actually stabbing pipe the other way. So, so that was the first piece that got put in. Next one. So here's the area there is the Bear River siphon inlet. It's just right there where that remaining concrete structure is. You can see the bypass pipe coming up and drops down in and dumps water into the Bear River siphon. Then we've got a smaller pipe that runs over to feed the phase two canal, so we keep both of those wet, which are wet year round. So they've now excavated down there, and that's an area where we'll actually have a pipe encasement because we'll be driving over the top of it when we're all done. So, okay. That's what they put in so far. So we're still good. We're ahead of schedule from the schedule for this year as well. So we shouldn't have any trouble in terms of being able to make water flow by May or March 30th.
Are they averaging about 10 sticks a day?
Right now it's about 8. Yeah, we got less area to work with in terms of lay down and stuff. So it's a little bit trickier. Plus, it takes them a little while to kind of get up and get to speed. But as they continue to move down, the roundabout trips become shorter, so it's faster to get pipe down back and forth and rock, etc. We did hit quite a bit of rock right at the beginning. Which took about a week to get through. Was that hard bluestone. It was just a little cap. But anyway, now most of it's all rippable again with the shank, so they can move forward pretty quick.
I know that the CWA was wanting to buy some capacity in this pipe. Has anything come of those discussions? Are they still?
I didn't hear the first part of your question.
I know that PCWA was interested in buying some capacity in this pipe.
So we talked about that at the last piece, this
2x2?
couple different 2x2s ago. We got another meeting in January. Nothing at this point has been moved forward on that conversation. I think it was something that was a conversation years ago, and I don't believe that went forward. Our capacity and our design criteria for this pipe. So at this point, we haven't moved forward with that conversation, and I haven't heard any word from PCWA since that meeting.
Well, there's a certain risk in selling capacity in that pipeline. If we want to take that back, we could loan them capacity, but I wouldn't sell it to them.
I think that's some of the discussions that we'll ultimately would have to have, whether you're truly buying the capacity of it or being able to buy water out of it or push water through it.
Which is a whole different kettle of fish.
Correct.
No, I would oppose selling them capacity because they haven't contributed really to the construction, design, and all the headaches that have gone into it.
Water through it.
What's that?
Just wheeling water through it for them.
It's possible.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that option is.
Particularly as an emergency option, they need to reroute water through that because of some catastrophe in the Bear Canal.
Well, and to offset their list, I think.
And it also makes a difference in terms of the time of year that the water would be there. Typically, before we've had discussions, it has to do with the maintenance period, right? It's more in this time of year where they're particularly looking for some water, versus the middle of summer when we're pushing most of our water through there because there's other restrictions between this project and their intake.
Well, I can see why they'd want to move water through there during the PG&E outage, have alternative routes. That would be entirely reasonable.
Yeah.
In which case, at that time, there's typically plenty of capacity in our system because our demands are nowhere near.
Correct.
Oh, good, okay. Well, that's good to know.
So the next one is also shared tank, so now you can go back to that. Okay, so there's the existing, hyperlon tank, or reservoir, as you've seen it, right before we started to drain it. I'll go to the next one. So here, the contractor, first thing they do is they have to cut the liner into strips that are manageable, so they drain the tank down, then they start to pull the cover and the liners out. Go ahead and do the next one. And what they do is they cut it, and then they peel it up to the top, fold it up, and then they can have their equipment pick it up and move it out of the way. So they're out there, they're starting to do that work now. We're finalizing, the design drawings of the tank, et cetera. But they're moving forward, so we're out there now. We got past fire season, we waited a little extra time to make sure we got past some of the fire season concerns before we drained the tank.
So is there a schedule on this?
Yeah, it should be done by June, I believe June of 21. This is supposed to be back in, the new tank will be in service by 21, June of 21.
And this was a design build?
This is a design build with Gateway Pacific, who also did our Banner Taylor tanks.
Yeah, these guys are really good.
Yeah.
That once they get it set up, they just crack it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're moving forward. We broke ground now, so we're starting to ramp up for that. And once we get the excavation and the pads poured, then weather becomes less concerning for them because they stage everything off the floor that they pour.
So how do the elevations in this look compared to the old reservoir?
So the tank's higher.
They're a little higher?
Yes, it is. And so part of the CEQA document had an elevation that we showed on there. So we're staying within that elevation.
What is it?
I don't remember the specific elevation height, but it's
It's
probably
like an additional 5 feet or something.
It's like 10 to 15 feet higher than the berm.
But
But you have to remember, this is kind of at a high spot, right? So your line of sight is looking this way, and we're keeping the outside berm, we're not taking it out. So that elevation difference, even though the tank's higher, is still smaller in terms of their view shed.
So you can paint this tank and make it kind of blend in?
That was one of the requirements, is to look at, the color of the tank.
Will we have to pump water up to it?
No.
Okay, it's all gravity.
Yeah.
Lower reef is quite a bit higher.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
And so what's the extent, how far down will the storage in this go? Does it only go Lake of the Pines, or how, does it
So
go
it
into
feeds
North
the
Auburn?
Alta Sierra Zone, the lower Alta Sierra Zone, as well as the, interconnection with Lake of the Pines as well. So like
It goes all the way down to, it goes all the way down to Bear River, basically.
So
Yeah,
the Higgin Marketplace thing?
Correct, that would be if it was we're running water through our intertie between the two systems, right? Because normally that's served from Lake of the Pines.
How often do we run that intertie?
I think we try to run it continuously because we have services in it, but it's not necessarily a wide open system, right? We've just got water moving through it, water fresh, and the services that are along the mouth. And then the idea is to help with peaking times for, Lake of the Pines. And help offset the peak times, demand. But again, it also serves the whole lower Alta Sierra Zone as well as across the street there, Lime County going up that direction as well.
As I recall, the rationale was partly the same as the E. George Lake Wildwood, that project, that, if you make this interconnection, that you don't have to upgrade the Lake of the Pines treatment plant as soon or as much. So you can serve the peak demands at Lake of the Pines throughout the Sierra, or Loma Rica.
Correct. Yeah, right, it's not meant to replace it, it's only meant to supplement it.
So it's exactly the same rationale as the E. George Lake Wildwood,
Regionalization.
redundancy.
Security, safety.
I'm sorry, what's that? Yeah, you can scroll to what's the next project? I can't remember. Oh, I know what that one is. Okay, never mind. So Hemp Hill, had that scoping meeting, obviously, so now we're just in development. We have reached out to UAIC, so we've started the AB 52 consultation with UAIC. I don't know if there's been a specific meeting date set yet or not, but we have sent the letter out. We received the letter back, and so we started that consultation process with UAIC, which is the only one that had shown interest, and then we also sent them out to the other two that are on record, but one responded that it was not within their area, and the other did not respond at all, which was what we would expect anyway, being down in Lincoln, effectively.
I had a lot of interest in this Auburn ravine. A lot of people have been reaching out to me, trying to figure out a holistic solution. I know South Sutter Water District and RD 108 is getting fish screens, South Sutter, so if we work with them, all the regulators, everybody wants to look at Auburn ravine as a holistic system, and so I'm excited about that.
Awesome. We do have a draft document in-house right now that we're reviewing for fish passage alternative. So we're taking a look at that right now. So that'll be all part of the process and the document that we'll put out.
And they're still checking, how many roadway alignments are they looking at?
Well, we're still looking at the one basic, which is
Going
running down
into
to
Auburn,
Virginia Town.
AR1,
Yeah,
going into AR1.
yeah, correct.
Did we check if we had capacity in AR1 to take that whole flow and not diminish the other one?
It won't diminish the other one. But as we've talked about before, it does, should the demands continue to increase, if they do, in our system, it just means that having to deal with AR1 would happen sooner than later because of that capacity being taken up by that one potential alternative.
And they're looking at the temperature and the flow from Gold Hill.
Those will all be part of the discussion.
That's the CEQA document.
That's the CEQA document. And the draft document by April 1st.
April.
What a waste of time.
What part's the waste of time?
I think, in 2015, they deemed that as infeasible, the pipeline.
Who deemed that infeasible?
It was Kleinschmidt.
No, they didn't,
2015.
so they didn't look at that one. They were talking
No,
about
they said, while on paper, this looked, it was option 6.
and that was coming off of using the Lincoln Canal and taking
No,
the pipe from
AR1.
there,
It was AR1.
from AR1, and they showed it as infeasible.
Because it would have to put a fish screen, would have to do, that would be a regulated diversion point. Would have to move the point of diversion for the fill.
Well, it's already a point of diversion, so you'd have to,
But you'd have to upgrade it.
which seems feasible to the process.
And then cut up the road that was just cut up.
CEQA doc will
Work it
help
out.
us identify all that. A lot of interest down there, for sure.
There's a lot of interest in there. I'll tell you what. I'm hearing a lot about it.
So the next one, North Auburn Treatment Plant. So this is to upgrade with the generator and the high lift pumps and to put the VFDs in there. We've got the RFQ we sent out to contractors for moving forward with putting this generator in, et cetera. We expect that to be done, this work to be done this winter. Luckily, we didn't need PSPS event for Auburn, so, but this will make sure we won't have that problem in the future, which is critical, obviously, the water treatment plant down there in Auburn. This Pinewood Pump Station, another one is to put another generator there, again, a permanent generator there for PSPS event. And we've got a draft study and review in terms of what size and what type of generator we want. It's a very large generator to try to run all the pumps, so we're looking at whether it makes sense to just run maybe 2 of the pumps, et cetera, to minimize how big a generator we need to put in there, plus we're limited in terms of footprint. Only put so much in that spot.
And where is it at, in like in relation to each George or to?
Let's see, so,
Pinewood's just kind of off the DS Canal, so it'll be
Yeah, but-
above hydraulically, E-George.
you should have that one on the map, I think. You want to take a look at it?
It feeds E-George.
Yeah.
It's upstream of each George, okay.
Yeah, it allows it to us to get water to.
To each George, okay.
Correct. Pinewood? Oh, 705. It'd be up the hill. Yeah, it's up there.
pretty far up in the system.
So these next ones are all, the next 3 or 4 are all related to new budget ones, so they've just been assigned. I won't go into too much other than you can see, the Lake Wildwood Treatment Plant. That's the drying beds, the backwash pumps, and the canal intake screen. Those were the items identified in that report, that should be done in terms of upgrading the existing plant. So those are budgeted for next year, so we'll start that process and get the design going and put that in next year under the 2021 budget. And then the other two, Loma Rica, clear well expansion and the CT time stuff, we'll start that process. The clear well expansion wouldn't happen for a couple of years, but this should just start the design component of it.
And Loma Rica's tied into E. George, right?
Yeah, they're intertied. They can go both directions.
They can go both directions. Loma Rica's higher in elevation, so, Loma Rica can gravity feed E. George.
Correct.
E. George can only feed Loma Rica going through the pump station that we built to, again, create redundancy in the system.
What was your question?
I'm just trying to visualize. See, I haven't seen these, so it's hard to visualize.
So part of what we have in terms of the clear wells is the way they're set up, basically those storage tanks. And we can't utilize the storage as well as sitting there because we need enough contact time to be able to have the chlorine contact time before we can push it out in the distribution system. So as we get in the heavier flows, then that limits our ability to pull water out of those storage facilities, where this is all part of upgrading that so that we can
And the storage is
utilize it.
on the treated water side of
Correct.
Loma Rica.
Correct. We have a reservoir there, but this is the treated water site.
Reservoirs, raw water reservoirs.
Correct.
And so E. George is lower, Loma Rica's higher, and then is all of the service area of Loma Rica higher as well?
Not all of it. So only portions of it.
Lower than Loma Rica. So it's like, Loma Rica can feed it.
Yeah. There's an upper zone where, George we have to use the pump, intertie pump station to either get it to the treatment plant into that upper zone by the airport and all that area up in there. Whereas Loma Rica can gravity feed the entire E. George system.
And what's the capacity of Loma Rica?
I think it's right around 16. Don't hold me to that exact, right in there close. We've been downgraded a couple of times because they're pressure filters, which the Department of Safety, let's get these backwards. Anyways, the, California Department of Health and...
Well, now it's the water board.
Now it's the water board.
Yeah, now it's part of the water board,
drinking
yeah.
water.
Anyway, they degrade the capacities of those filters because of the type of filters that they... So they were designed for a little more, but we can't. We're not allowed to push that much water.
I'll look into that.
Then Centennial, Water Supply will have an update the next engineering committee in December. There's nothing that has gone on since the last update. So I don't expect anything to go on between now and the next update either. Next one's the community investment. Table Meadows were done, those completion was finalized. Those will get removed from the future project. So that's all done, water's being served, customers are connected. So that went well, went very quickly. Got done and got out of our way before we started ramping back up on the Combi Phase 1, so that was good. And then, Loma Rica Drive, we're waiting on funding. As you're aware, we put no money in the budget for next year for the district finance water line extension program. We will be coming to APC and then I think to the board, with the monies that are available this year in the district finance, that we can do a portion of Loma Rica. So staff would recommend that we build a portion of that with the funds from this year.
I have a question about that. At the CAFR, at the last board meeting when we were discussing the CAFR, they said that in the entire district-funded water line extension program, that 150 customers have benefited from that.
Okay?
Is that correct?
I don't know.
Is that what it stated?
That's what they said in the CAFR, that 150, we've increased our treated water by 150 customers. And we spent, well, Scott says over 50 million just in Division 3. So
Well, it
we
would
spent
have
over
been 50 million in district
for
finance.
150 people.
It would have been 50 million for district finance water line extensions, and with the understanding that the district finance water line extensions are being paid by those customers.
25% of it.
They're being,
The whole thing eventually.
no,
The whole thing eventually, they
not
pay it back.
25%. So, the 25% maybe is what you're talking about in terms of if we've upsized the pipe for the benefit to us, maybe? But like for, Table Meadows, that's an 8-inch water line, so they paid for the entire project.
Not sure what it states in the capper, but we can look at that.
But we put the money up front, obviously, and then those that don't connect, we have to sit on that money that we fronted until they do finally connect.
Okay, but it's 100% reimbursement.
150 customers
It's
sounds
100% reimbursed.
on order of magnitude correct, because these projects, and we've done a number of them, tend to knock out about, 20 to 15, 40, maximum 40
I think it was
customers
41 or 42 for this last phase of Table Meadows.
at a time. And, we've done other projects that are quite a bit bigger. We did take on the Cement Hill project, which knocked out, 230 customers at one crack.
But that was different,
But that was different, different,
district finance, that was
using state money for
different
the-
funding,
for the-
much bigger project. So, overall, between Cement Hill and Rodeo Flat and so on, we've benefited hundreds of, we've brought, needed water, to a lot of customers. And some of these BEP projects, like the Loma Rica Lake of the Pines BEP project, opens the potential to bring on many more customers in an area that has failing and poorly performing wells. And so that's part of the rationale.
And the BEP is where it's a proportion of the costs that are paid by the.
And how many people have connected to our BEP so far?
We'd have to look at that, sure.
Well, those projects will come online in future years, but the people in that area, in the Salt Creek area, were fully aware of the BEP and fully supportive of that pipeline coming in, because some of those people have been trucking water to their homes for the past 20 to 30 years, because the groundwater in that area is saline and unusable.
This is Division 3?
Division 3.
And the BEP and the district finance are two different thought processes, right? The BEP is part of what.
The BEP is the backbone, district finance are the ribs.
Whereas the true district finance are just typically the mostly 8-inch water lines that are going into these communities that are paying for that.
The whole idea was to build ribs, extending out of the backbone, and those projects take time to develop.
And they're not readily apparent once the backbone is complete. There's an opportunity, but until the financing is there and the community decides to tap into it,
And
we don't know that, we know that, for instance, the Salt Creek, those wells are poor. So it serves a dual purpose. Same thing with going down Rough and Ready Highway, when that's involved, right? That backbone is going straight through disadvantaged communities throughout Rough and Ready that are going to, at some point, be benefited through that process.
in the Salt Creek area, and from my past life, being director of the Water Analysis Lab, I analyzed quite a few samples from that area. And there are many wells in that area that produce lots of water, but they produce it at a salinity that exceeds the salinity of seawater. And so it's not very useful water.
Right. But without developments that want to develop those areas, we're creating an incentive for people to move to the wildlife.
These people are already there.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, well,
These
the
people
point
are
about
already
how many,
We're promoting growth, which is, I guess that's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's a different argument.
yeah,
I have that argument now.
different.
we are. We're promoting growth by doing that. With our money, with the ratepayers' money.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion.
You said that before. That's not happening, right?
Not here. So the next one is Maranatha, which again is just on hold because there's no budget for next year, so, it's just on the list. The raw water master plan, we're scheduled for next Wednesday to have a presentation. I don't know, Greg, did you wanna?
Oh, yeah, we're bringing, I mean, this is certainly for the master plan, it's budgeted for the 2021 year to bring that forward, the plan for water, the actual raw water master plan to develop the 50-year outlook on district improvements and opportunities to identify, how in the next 50 years to 100 years are we going to identify this delta between the Sierra snowpack, which has been our largest reservoir since the beginning, to looking out, is that going to happen anymore, and what is the delta? So the raw water master plan, we'd anticipate coming in, we've got it budgeted to start somewhere in quarter 3 of 2021, and we'll be bringing that forward with the plan for water, that concept.
So are these technical memos, the technical memos say they're studies, and so we had the first technical memos, and they had other technical memos that weren't even defined what they were. So is there gonna be are they gonna be combined and finalized?
What do you mean, the others? You mean the other alternatives
The
that
other
were
alternatives.
placed out? Yeah, those will be finalized. Those are being packaged as addendums to the first technical memorandums that were submitted to the public in August.
And a final document will be presented next Wednesday?
Yep, that's what's coming to the board for final review and file as standalone document of, here's the data that was presented on the TMs. That's gonna happen.
Including all their response to comments, et cetera, et cetera.
There's been a lot of comments. We have roughly 60-plus questions from the public that I believe, are being posted to the website today. We should be finalizing those today. We've got roughly 30 of them that are already on the website in terms of questions. Some others we've had to coordinate on, so those are coming in today. They should be on the website, I think today, maybe Thursday the latest. And then, a handful of comments, a lot of comments from the public regarding certain aspects that, quite frankly, aren't relevant in the conversation at the moment. They have to do with policy direction. They have to do with direction of the board and sort of the comment that you just made right now, which is, well, if we do district finance water lines or backbone extensions, that produces growth. So it's sort of that overall construct of how the board and the district sees development, sees updating our aging infrastructure, incorporating new infrastructure into the system. How does that interlay? So it's a lot of kind of policy-driven. People are questioning about, what our conservation and what our conservation practices and policies should be. It's just stuff that's not necessarily pertaining to the technical memoranda as they are presented now, right? HDR will give an overview of how that demand model was interlaid. There was a lot of questions on what are the assumptions, and so they've got a presentation that they'll be conducting on Wednesday.
Are they gonna compile it all into one final document? That's my question.
Three TMs.
I think she's asking, are they gonna
Update
make changes to the TM?
and let it be the final, have a final that's considered everything and a final.
So, will there be, as part of the final document, will it be like an addendum, like there often is with CEQA documents that have basically comments and responses to comments?
This isn't a CEQA document.
I understand, it's not a CEQA document, but
We gotta plan that.
but that's a format that's often used in CEQA proceedings where you...
So no, we're not attaching, we hadn't planned to attach the comments or the questions that came in from the public on this. However, you will receive those comments and questions within the board package.
So So they're not changing a single word in any of the TMs.
We have adjusted the drought measures, right? So the 5 worst drought years, we've adjusted those, and you've seen those in the 2 different, alternatives. So those will be attached.
That's the only changes you've made.
That's correct.
We're not making any other changes, we're saying. Thank you for your questions, but.
So you have to understand that the TM and the number at the end of the TM, which is the demand number, which is the big one in the room, right, is a snapshot. Right? The idea is that they've taken our tool, which is our demand model, and they've updated it. And next week, we're gonna have further discussions on those details. What information did they update? How does that information get put into the model? Those can all be changed. We can change the input. We can change 0% growth. We should be doing no growth, et cetera. We can do that as we move forward with these other processes, both the urban and ag plan as well as the plan for water.
Presumably at a later time, you can use that demand modeling and you can run various scenarios. One potential scenario is a zero growth scenario, and see how that shakes out in terms of supply, given the environmental demands, which are the major driver to the system. So my guess is that you could reduce consumptive demand to zero, and perhaps even a little bit negative, and you would still have a broken system.
That was one of the things I asked for. I asked for what is the watershed runoff associated with those water year types. They pointed out these environmental flows over and again, wet year, critical wet, more dry, critical dry. And they said, oh, this is the environmental flow for those water types. I said, well, what's the watershed runoff associated with those?
That's all in the model, I'm sure.
It's not in the report, and it sounds like you're not going to put it in the report. And there were some things that were easy to put to update and
all of those watershed runoff numbers are incorporated in the 2011 raw water master plan.
So nothing's changed. They said they updated.
And my guess is the hydrology hasn't changed all that much.
Well, they've added systems to it. They did some pretty dramatic changes to it.
Yeah,
They added Bear River and Deer Creek. They added systems that's not exactly the same. At least in their report, they said it wasn't exactly the same. And so we asked to just provide some fill-in information so we understand what we're looking at. And you're saying we're not going to do that. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that correct?
You want to see what the dry year watershed runoff is.
I want a final report that considers what could be considered. Yeah, I want to know dry, wet, critically wet,
In terms of just the watershed runoff?
Environmental flows. You're saying that we have these environmental flows in these water type years. And I'm saying, what's the associated watershed runoff that is associated with those dry weather years? That we know what the environmental runoff is, or environmental requirements are, but we don't know what does that mean?
Because when you do the 5-year run, they used the average year and then went into the 5-year drought scenario based on an average year.
On the average.
Which included an average year environmental flow requirement.
Right.
What she's suggesting is that we go through and do those for dry, critically dry, et cetera.
Well, you had to have done it to establish your environmental flows.
What do you mean? The environmental flows are not established based on the model. Those were predetermined as part of the FERC licensing process.
As part of the FERC. And so they were based on the water year types.
Correct.
And so there should be that information somewhere. We should know what the watershed runoff are and those environmental year types.
It's all in the 2011 raw water master plan?
No, it's not.
You want to bet?
Not the update.
Not the update.
Not based on the
They
input from
updated it.
for climate change, et cetera, plus the additional flows that we put in for the Bear River and some of the smaller watersheds.
My guess is that in order to do the analysis, they had to have determined all that.
They had to.
But it's in the license, the FERC license, that there are, X thousand acre feet to X thousand acre feet of water is
considered a dry year.
A wet year, X thousand to X thousand is a dry year.
Yep.
We have that.
It should be in the report. And I said that in August. And so
To the table
as a
Just a
list of
table.
the table.
Yeah, you put a big old table, you said over and over again how much the environmental flows are, but you didn't ever say what the associated watershed runoff was with those, so.
Other than that, they'd be more or less depending on a dry or a wet year, right?
That's exactly right. So are we gonna get a final report that's stamped and sealed and stood behind that this is the compilation of all this work? Or are we gonna have a PowerPoint here, an addendum there, and a memo here, and is there gonna be a comprehensive thing that we can review and say, okay, here's what came out of this exercise?
The TMs have already been stamped and signed.
But they didn't say final. They didn't say they were final, they were for review, they were brought to.
We'll put a final
they
on
weren't-
it, they'll be final.
So we wasted the public's time to even look at them?
No.
They were final, and so it was already done before you even invited the public to come and talk about it?
As a matter of fact, Director Peters, these documents are, as Doug mentioned earlier, they are ongoing, they're evolving. We can adjust we can adjust the system and adjust the numbers pertaining to whatever assumption we want to put in. The FERC regulatory flows are what they are. Now, if you haven't seen the specific table that tells us exactly what the FERC regulatory flow for each water
Well,
year,
it's pretty critical, because Director
one
Wilcox is
activity.
saying that these environmental flows are gonna drain the system.
well, that's one activity.
And so we
but-
don't know
but
what they're compared to.
There are so many different, there are a number of assumptions that members of the public,
And they should write them down.
and they are contained within questions, and they're contained within a bunch of comments that we're going to give the board at the end. When we really identify what this process is, we're gonna adjust some of it, and when we get into the real raw water master plan, the plan for water adjustment, that's when we're gonna have a whole series of workshops where we can play with this model all day long. And if somebody says, I want 0% growth in this district for the next 50 years, we don't wanna connect anyone from here on out. What does that do to our supply and our delta? And then when we say, what is this, what is the demand year X, Y, or Z? And we can change all of these numbers over time. So this is these TMs are a point in time, and I don't believe we've wasted anybody's time. I think indeed we've kind of leapfrogged, and this is what I told the board earlier. We've leapfrogged sort of an 8 to 10 month period of giving this information to the public so they can absorb it, and we've garnered a ton of really great comments and questions about it. We've done our best to answer some of these questions and answer all of these questions. There's a whole series of comments and narratives, however, that are more board-related and policy-directed, that these TMs and this particular point in time isn't intended to answer and divulge and dig into the specifics of them right now.
So there were some typographical errors, there was some the metrics were off, there was some mistakes, but we're gonna keep those mistakes and we're gonna stamp them in final, and they're gonna be fine, and the document's gonna
So
say
the
final.
one we changed from CFS to
We'll clean those items up.
we changed that.
And so, I'd like to see one document, all in one place, that has the original TMs, has the addendum TMs, and has all of the questions, and I want it to say final, and I want it to be stamped and sealed by whoever the engineer and responsible charge of the work is.
That's the intent.
No, you said there wasn't,
I
you said,
believe that's the intent for,
you said we're gonna have tech memos here, and we're gonna have this there, and
well,
we're
they're
gonna have the other
technical
thing there, and there's
memorandums.
gonna be.
They're technical memorandums, all three of them.
But they say they're
with the
studies,
tech-
and the technical memorandums, they say they're studies.
But what's the difference?
You tell
That's
me.
the final study. Final analysis of the technical memorandum and an update. For now.
And it'll
They're
say,
going to be
and it'll
changed.
have to say final. In our engineer's act, it says you have to say.
Well, this is part of the process. This is actually fluid. I mean, this is gonna be looked at again
Yeah.
with the urban water management plan, the ag water management plan. This is just a base of information, so we can get started on that work
For the moment.
for the moment.
Right. When the board directs other adjustments and other assumptions to be made,
And how
They'll
much
be
did this
changed.
cost us?
Overall,
$400,000?
I think it's 3 something.
$380?
something.
$390. I want a final product.
Well, once the urban and the ag plan are complete, that's gonna be
This
the
is
final
not
product.
that.
Once the raw water master plan is complete,
This
this
is
is a
not
data
that
set
either.
these are data sets that inform those final documents. These data sets can
No, this
change.
is a final document in itself. We paid almost $400,000 for it. It's a final document. It should be compiled and professionally put together.
Document, I mean,
And you can compile it into one document if you want.
or not. There's no requirement that 3 documents need to become 1 document.
Well, then I
It can be
want
3
every one
stamped
of them
documents.
stamped and finaled and sealed and dated and noted that it's final and,
Noted in the date.
and I don't want it all in different places. You know, it makes it so hard to track stuff if you got this piece of paper over here and that piece, you know, it should be just, you should compile it. And if you're saying it was final when it was submitted in August, that's,
We have 3
It's
documents.
no different than a design drawing that gets changed as you move forward. You stamp it and final it.
and it
you
should
put it.
say for review or not for construction
It
or.
can even say
or-
for construction, Director Peters, and then as you move forward, you still make
You add
changes
it.
to it.
That's correct. But
It
it's,
should be
but
no
the note,
different.
the status of the document is noted on the document.
We can do that.
But a final document can still be changed.
And we intend for
Well, but you're not changing it. You're telling me right now you're not changing it.
I just said we intend for this to change. This is going to be, all of these questions and comments that have come from the public, these requests, we have a ton of requests.
Did you answer them?
We have,
We
have
HDR.
60-plus questions that are answered. There are a number of requests that have not been answered.
Like the environmental flows, the watershed runoff associated with those environmental flows. That should be pretty easy to get, shouldn't it, Kian? That should be pretty easy to pull together.
Yeah, we have that.
And that's what HDR did that work, right? HDR did the first work.
They were involved in the light.
Yeah.
So we have a number of requests, Director Peters, that we were not prepared to, address or amend these technical memorandums because of these specific requests, right? And they could be anything from set your demand scenario to 0. We can do that. We can do that
I don't
all
want
day
to
long.
set the demands. That's not realistic.
Correct.
That's not realistic. So
No.
why would we do that?
That's a bookend.
No.
This bookend,
It's a bookend.
you're playing
One
what if, you're
percent
playing
growth.
what if.
We play what if scenarios, and we're gonna do that in the urban and ag. We'll do that specifically for the raw water master plan. We'll have a ton of what ifs.
And, yeah, I'm not opposed to backbone extensions, I'm not opposed to water line extensions, but I am opposed to them without developers and partners that are right on board with us. What I'm opposed to is us upsizing system, build it and they will come. I don't like that. I'm opposed to that. It's a wasting of the ratepayers' money to build oversize everything we have without having firm development in line. That's my position. That's my personal position. I know Director Wilcox does not agree with me, but I think it's not fair to the current ratepayers to pay for all this infrastructure that sits in the ground, that we can't turn over the water, we've got these tanks that are too big, we can't, we've got to turn over the water faster because we can't, we've got all these problems. Why build the big tanks if we can't serve them to something? Anyway, but that's background, I'm digressing, and on this raw water, on this thing, I'd like to see, so it sounds like there's been no changes to the technical memorandum. You've answered some questions, and just said, oh, we're not gonna do with that at this time, but it's gonna come up next time. And that's what I'm hearing today. Does that pretty much sum it up?
I think that's a fair summarization.
All right, I'll move on then. I'm not happy about it, but we'll move on.
So the next one is sediment removal, if you wanna pop that up. So this is just a couple of quick ones. They haven't finished all these documents, but I asked them to, Adrian to just send me a couple so you can get a feel for. So this is Combi, and so they went out and did the bathymetric studies. So this one's at Combi. You see their, color, basically based on the depths that's out there. So you can see how they develop an overall volume and come up with, how the reservoirs fill it in. Go ahead to the next one, John. Again, just more close-up one, you can see where it starts to show the underwater stuff, where you can see the channel, how it moves through the system and how shallow it is in areas, et cetera. Next one. This one, I don't know why that particular square was in there, other than when they took a snapshot for Adrian, but again, just more definition, as you can see the channels and the areas within the sediment. And this, it doesn't show up here very good, but a 3D image so they can take that, the LiDAR information and move it around, and we start to see three-dimensional areas of that same spot that we just looked at. Again, just information that they collect, and then that's what gets used to develop the volumes of these reservoirs that are part of our reservoir study that were put together.
And what's the orientation of which way's north or what?
Go back. So, north is up. There's the dam down towards the bottom.
Where the blue is, yeah.
Yeah.
And so those other ones, where in this are those?
Scroll through the next one. So there's the dam there.
Dam. Okay,
Now
so
it's
you're moving
rotated,
upstream,
yeah.
you're moving
so
up,
you're moving
okay.
it up. So you can see the channel there.
Okay.
And then the next one, I think, is just, and then close up even more of that,
Just
particular
right in that
channel area. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So, we're supposed to have that draft document in December for internal review first, so hopefully the first part of next year, first quarter of next year, we'll have a document that we'll bring to the engineering committee to start to talk about the reservoirs in general and our sediment removal and how we want to potentially move forward.
Is the bathymetry only being done on Rollins and Combi, or?
It's just a certain, Rollins, Combi, Chicago Park, and Dutch Flat, yeah. So there's a couple spots where.
Yeah, so the upper division ones aren't really being looked at, because.
No, because the sediment problems aren't really
problem.
up there, correct. It's relatively minor, so it wasn't, we didn't feel it was necessary to spend the money to do those upper ones. Most of it's granite up above or around it.
Yeah, so low sediment production,
Correct.
watershed.
Is there any opportunity to increase, capacity of any of those structures up, since we're looking at the spillways and the dam faces and all of that of some of these higher elevation dams?
In terms of like raising
Raising them?
facilities, so we did a rough overview of some of those facilities, 5-6 years ago, ones that we thought potentially could be raised. Most of the smaller upper division watershed ones weren't ones that we considered, other than, Jackson Meadows was one possibility, but it's got a relatively small watershed above it. So raising and putting storage in Jackson Meadows, you're at a higher risk of not filling that on a yearly basis.
Speaking of wasting of ratepayers' money, it's a waste to build a bigger dam when the watershed doesn't yield the water to.
Yeah, right.
And that's crazy.
Yeah, so we looked at a couple of those, looked at Scotts Flat, looked at Rollins, et cetera, so.
There's conveyance issues in the upper.
And then you also have conveyance issues in terms of getting the water into the system.
You can only get the water in so
Well,
fast.
it doesn't come in snowpack, but it comes in rain. There gets rain up there. It rains up there. And that rain fills reservoirs.
Yeah, but we're not allowed to lower the gates until a certain date. And so a good chunk of storage in Jackson Meadows, we can't even avail ourselves to.
Well, some of the facilities aren't gonna lend themselves to raising, you'd be replacing. You'd be building a new facility, basically, right? Because you can't, build it on top of some of those old ones.
We're doing a lot of upgrades to some of the So isn't Sioux Fork still part of our
Yeah,
license?
some of the spillway work, et cetera, right? But that wouldn't make a difference in terms of being able to raise the dam itself taller, right? Because you're putting in your foundations and how those were constructed back in the 1800s, aren't gonna lend themselves to doing that. Some of the other ones, Scotts Flat, again, it's the limited watershed within Scotts Flat, a lot of that's imported water that comes in. You also have Rollins, which can be raised, but only to a certain amount, because of the core and the type that was done, right? So we have looked at some of that, correct? And some of these can be raised or rebuilt, absolutely.
That's a discussion for a different day.
Yep.
I think that's it for that. Other than, the Loma Rica Reservoir, they, pushing all that remaining material that we had stockpiled out onto the airport road, so that'll get finished up here shortly. That's it. You want to jump into yours?
Sure.
When do we think we'll get these others, that's, Ore Creek and Greenhorn and Sheep Hollow? These
I
are,
think what, the thought process is we get this study put together, and then we're gonna come to the committee and then ultimately the board to talk about how and what we wanna do with these reservoirs moving forward, right? We talk about being able to pull a bunch of sediment out of Rollin, but the cost to do that for the volume that you get is pretty high and may not be well spent.
right,
Right, so that's why we wanna present that information to develop a plan that the board and the committee and the board ultimately is in agreement with, and then we can move forward with dealing with these. And whether that's Ore Creek, maybe we just abandon Ore Creek in terms of the facility and reroute around it, right? That may make the most sense. So we'll start to develop that plan, and then we can move forward with implementing that
so,
plan.
but in-house is gonna be doing all of these smaller reservoir sediment studies.
Yeah, ones that we need to do that would be our guys
When would
going
we,
out.
that's my question, when would we be doing that?
I'd have to check with Adrian what the schedule is, but it's just our survey guys would be going out there and doing that work as they fit it in.
So it's not a scheduled thing right now.
Yeah, it's not, I don't know that they're specifically scheduled, but I'm aware of. And some of them are so small that we can make some pretty good assumptions without actually having to do a whole lot of work out there, for understanding that, this thing is 90% filled in, so we don't need to survey that to.
Okay, all right, so with that, I'm actually gonna let Nathan give our update. You wanna go ahead and run from there?
Sounds good. So as last time, I plan on touching on most of our projects here today, but feel free to stop me if there's one that I'm skipping over that you have questions on, and we can jump back and take care of that. That being said, let's start under Program 10-2, Hydro Powerhouse Improvement, Line 1 for the Dutch Flat 2 Powerhouse Balance of Plant Project. This project is now in the post-construction phase. The new balance of plant PLC was installed during the September-October outage period, and testing of the new vibration monitoring system was completed before returning the unit to service at that time. Next week, we have one final test for the new float control level scheduled for Wednesday, and after that, the project will have been completed. Down to Line 2 for the Chicago Park Powerhouse Cooling Water System Upgrade. This project is in the design phase. Hydro is currently reviewing 100% design submittal and bill of materials for the cooling water system design, while a third-party engineering review is also underway to ensure compatibility of the existing control system at Chicago Park Powerhouse with the new cooling water system. That being said, Hydro will move to procure parts and materials later this year, pending that third-party review, and we will complete installation next year during the 2021 annual outage for Chicago Park Powerhouse. Moving down to Line 4, the Chicago Park Powerhouse Fire Suppression System Upgrade. This project is in design. We have received and compiled responses for additional final design changes that are being incorporated by our consultant for the fire suppression system. We held a meeting between NID and our consultants to finalize these changes, and we have a goal of starting construction now in January of 21, pending these final design changes coming within the next couple of weeks.
Do we miss the comment, so this roadway, this 3,000 feet of road to Combi South?
Sure, so let's talk about, that's line 3, the Columbia South Powerhouse Access Road Project. We received final changes from Nevada City Engineering on the new road alignment. It was a slight alteration of alternative 2, that goes through the Arroyo property. This has been sent off to right-of-way to determine the easement needs evaluation. We've also been in contact with the property owner to discuss a hydrogeologist report, to determine impacts on the Arroyo well, and our impact related to construction and use of the future access road.
What's the engineer's estimate for that project?
Do you have a number? I think it's in preliminary design at this time.
I don't remember off the top of my head. We can get you that number. We have it in the report.
Okay. Do you know?
Something around 300, somewhere right around those,
And we'll follow up with that cost next month.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Looking now down to line 8, Rollins Powerhouse Oil Circuit Breaker Replacement Project. That project is in the planning phase. We have opened a project with PG&E's engineering team, and we are currently working with PG&E to provide documentation for the project that they have requested. Hydro is also contracted with a protection engineering firm that we've started the design phase of the project. We've developed specifications for this breaker. It is going to be a new vacuum circuit breaker. Those specifications, since the time of these updates, have actually been delivered to the manufacturer. We have requested a cost proposal, which is expected to come in later this month. We'll be coming back to the board to recommend approval of a purchase for that breaker within the coming months, depending on where that cost falls.
Can we go back to number 5?
Sure.
You want to, is your preference to walk through every job?
I would.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd appreciate that, because I'm bouncing around.
Sure. Let's go back up to number 5 then.
Sorry, yeah, that's a good.
That is the Columbia South Powerhouse Electrical Upgrade Project. This one is in the design phase as well. Hydro and engineer are currently working on a containment pad and foundation design for a new transformer. This is a new 12-kilovolt transformer that has been manufactured and shipped, and actually since the time of this update, Hydro received that transformer. And at this point, we are looking to we're going to be conducting an inspection and some preliminary testing over the next couple of weeks in order to ensure manufacturers conform with our technical specifications for this transformer.
Do you know how much it costs?
That one came to
Around $90,000, I think, $90,000.
Okay. Line 6 then, for the Dutch Flat 2 Powerhouse Fire Suppression System Upgrade Project. This is in the planning phase. Hydro has received a draft basis of design report from its consultant, the new fire suppression system at Dutch Flat 2 Powerhouse. We are currently reviewing and will provide comments for revisions to this document sometime this month. We will then prepare a project definition memo that will send this project over to engineering sometime later this year. Down to line 7, Deer Creek Powerhouse Upgrade Project. This one is in the planning phase. Hydro will make a site visit to the South Yuba Canal with PG&E during a scheduled outage in early November. That actually took place last week. For the purpose of taking measurements of the inside of the South Yuba Canal and a section of flume while it was dry. This was in order to install a new gauging station at the upstream end of where we will be taking over the South Yuba Canal. From the
upstream side.
Yeah, the very upstream end of where that transition point will be. And afterwards, we're going to prepare a work plan to submit our design, or conceptual design, I should say, to be PG&E for their review and approval prior to our installation. Okay. We talked about line 8, that was the Rollins Powerhouse Oil Circuit Breaker replacements. Let's go down to line 9. A similar project, the Bowman Intertie Breaker Replacement job. This one is in the planning phase. Very similar to the Rollins Breaker Replacement project. We'd like to get that one completed first. As I mentioned, we're upgrading to a vacuum circuit breaker, and so since that will be the first within the district, we'd like to see how that plays out before moving forward with the replacement at Bowman as well. But Bowman does have an existing SF6 breaker. SF6 is a extremely potent greenhouse gas, so we're ideally would be replacing it with something like the vacuum circuit breaker for a more environmentally friendly solution. Okay. Line 10 then, for the Scotts Flat Powerhouse electrical usage meter installation. This project is actually, the meter wasn't put in place last week, but the prior update we have here was that we received the meter, which was programmed and certified by a third-party consultant, which was Yultech. As I mentioned, the meter is now installed, and we'll be moving to close out the project. Line 11 for the Rollins Powerhouse Balance Plant Project. This one is in the planning phase at this time. Hydro is defining the project scope, and then early next year we will request bids to complete the design installation. The design will be completed during the 2021 outage at Rollins Powerhouse in the fall of 21, and from there that will be the last major balance plant upgrade project for our powerhouses. Okay. On to program 10-2, the Hydro Powerhouse improvement. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a continuation. My apologies. This is line 12. This is the Rollins Powerhouse Relay Protection Upgrade Project. This one is also in the planning phase with a similar update in that we are requesting a quote from a protection engineering consultant to help us develop the project scope sometime later this year. And then we will use that information in the developed scope next year to prepare a bid package that will be released sometime in 2021, with final design and construction planned during the 2022 annual outage at Rollins Powerhouse. Now moving on to program 10-3 for hydro dam and water improvements. Line 1, the Scotts Flat Spillway Repair Project. This one is in the planning phase. The Spillway Crestability Evaluation Report had been received and approved by DSOD. The HDR proposal for physical hydraulic modeling construction of the spillway modification, which would be built and performed in British Columbia, Canada, will go before the board for a recommendation for contract approval next week on Wednesday.
And what scale is that gonna be?
I believe it landed at a 1 to 40. It was either 1 to 30 or 1 to 40. I can't remember. There was a bunch of negotiation back and forth over it. But
I wanna see that. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
It's going to be pretty cool, and unfortunately, it's substantially cheaper to build it up in Canada. And they're just going to have to send us pictures of it or videos. They've adapted to the COVID protocols, and they'll set up cameras all over the place and you can watch it, but you need to see it in person.
Yeah,
But
they
probably
can't
not
get in there.
possible.
That's too bad. I'd like to see that.
Moving on to line 2, the Combe Abutment Scour Program. This one's in the planning phase. We have draft alternatives report that's being reviewed by the district and then will be submitted to DSOD for review and approval. At that point, Hydro will work to transfer the project over to engineering for continuation in the next phase of design via our project definition memo. On to line 3, the Jackson Lake Spillway Upgrade Project. Construction for this one was actually completed back in October, and the project is going to be ready for closeout, and will not be appearing on next month's update. Line 4, the gauging station, or otherwise known as the French Lake Upgrade Project. This one is in design. The draft design has been completed by Hydro. The CQCIP and TCEAP are being prepared by engineering, which is scheduled for review, or was scheduled for review at the end of October, before that gets submitted to FERC for approval. Construction is currently scheduled for the summer and fall of next year. Okay.
That's the Chicago Park 4 base?
No, that was the gauging station,
Okay.
also known as the French Lake Upgrade Project.
Okay.
And now moving down to program 10-4 for the Hydro Lower Division improvements. We have line 1, Chicago Park 4 Bay Canal Liner Replacement Project. This one's in the planning stages at this time. Hydro and engineering have completed a site visit back in September during the annual outage to inspect the existing liner condition and develop the project scope. Engineering is currently preparing a damage assessment report for Hydro, which we expect to receive from them sometime this month. And then from there, scoping discussions and the development of a design report with an alternatives analysis will start next year, early next year in January of 21. Down to program 10-5 for the Hydro Upper Division improvements. Line 1, the Record Creek Spillgate Replacement Project. This one is also in planning. Hydro has submitted a project definition memo to engineering to send the project over there. And our project activities and scoping will commence once an engineering project manager is assigned to the project. Line 2, the Bowman Spalding Canal improvements. This one is looking at reestablishing driving access to the upstream portal, of Clear Creek Tunnel. And at this time, it's also in the planning stages. We're currently seeking a study with an alternatives analysis for possible options to complete the repair, and to reestablish access to the canal, road, and berm. Down to program 10-6, line 1, the new Hydro Office radio tower investigation. This one is in planning and design at this time. We've released an RFP back in October, with proposals expected to come in at the end of next week on the 20th. And late this month, we will work to recommend the award of a contract in order to complete a feasibility study, which includes line of sight surveys, preliminary engineering, and cost development for budgeting purposes of a new radio tower to be located at the site of the future hydro office. And lastly, should be line 2, not line 3 here. We have the Dutch Flat 2 powerhouse communication upgrade. This one is in the planning stages. This is a project where Hydro is moving to install a microwave radio system, including a new radio tower at the Dutch Flat 2 forebay in order to establish data communications between those 2 points. We determined that fiber optic is not a feasible option at this point, and further study will be needed next year. Those are the updates from Hydro, so if you have any general questions or would like to go back and revisit a project,
Yeah, how about 10-1-1?
10-1.
Field office. So what's going on with that?
Oh, yes, we didn't get back all the way to the top of this page. So let me give you the update here. This one is in the design phase. This is for the new Hydro Field Office 2. The Energy Center program components are currently under development. The new maintenance facility and storage yard, we have a draft pre-designed by the architect, which is now complete. The 3 energy carbon concept studies are completed, which included forest carbon sequestration, pumped storage, and a solar field. Development of an overall site program, carbon and energy management strategy, and marketing and partner options is currently underway. Once all of these efforts are complete, findings will be summarized to present options and alternatives for developing the site into various levels of renewable energy generation and carbon zero footprint. So, development of an overall site program, carbon and energy management, and marketing and partner option. What is that about?
So there are, on these, zero carbon projects, and this one, the way this is penciling out, there's a room for a significant solar field out there. It'll be a net negative carbon project is what we're looking at. There are a number of folks out there that are interested in partnering on this sort of thing, and it's your Googles, it's your Microsofts that want to have a zero carbon footprint.
Mitigation bank kind of a thing?
Sort of thing, yeah. And so they will pay, in some cases, to develop these things for you. And they'll be partners with you moving forward. And so we're trying to put together this concept in a marketing proposal, for lack of a better word. So we can start talking to people and seeing, is this something that you're interested in? How can we make this work? They'll want the carbon credits that are generated out there, but we'll get a building out of the deal. So
you mean they'll pay for the building?
That remains to be seen, right? And I'm certain they won't pay for the entire building or the entire development out there. But if we can get a significant amount of money towards it, there's some real potential here, and we just won't know until we package this up and then try and sell it.
So it's all part of the same deal. It can't be uncoupled and developed.
Our goal is to couple it so that they'll have to help us build the building, right? If they want to come in and just build a solar farm out there, that's great.
Pay for a building, though, right?
That doesn't get us, maybe, right? We need to see how it all shakes out. So
you're in those discussions with
yes.
those organizations?
Yes. So yeah, we have a couple of different consultants working on it. The solar project was done by Recolte Energy. We looked at a pump storage concept that was done by Numeric, and then the building concept was done by WLC engineers or architects.
I haven't been to this site. Is it the Loma Rica site? That's a different place, right?
No, it's just around the corner from the existing hydroelectric department.
So it's fairly significant property we bought 3 or 4 years ago for this purpose.
A little over 200 acres.
Above Rollins.
It basically protects Rollins watershed. It was a deal. We got it for way under market because the guy wanted to basically sell it to us so he could preserve the land for the most part.
He was looking for some tax benefits.
He was looking for some tax benefits.
Who sold it? It's a private.
It was a private landowner.
Yeah.
Huh, that's interesting. Good to know. I didn't know that.
It was one of the land deals that we got raked over the coals on.
By who? Usual suspects?
Of course.
All right.
Any other questions?
No, thank you very much. And next, do you have any questions?
Oh, thank you very much, very complete.
Very complete, yeah.
So I'm gonna see if there's any questions from the public, but I'm not sure there's
No
really
public.
on there. I think that's all internal stuff. Any final questions from the committee members?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, well, then we'll go ahead and close the engineering committee.
Thank you.